Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Well, hello and welcome to our podcast today. I'm Valerie Sokolosky. You know, they say that 2 heads are better than 1, and that is really the truth for Craig and Clark Hodges, 2 brothers who are now running a very large investment management firm, the family firm that now has billions of dollars in client assets. These 2 gentlemen you can see on national and local news, places like CNBC, Fox Business News, Bloomberg. Let's take a quick look at a video.
So how long does that sort of vapor trail last of the positive feelings from the tax cut?
I think it's still being very much underestimated. The market's almost treating like it's a one-time thing. And really this will go on forever. Mm-hmm. And you have companies like housing and airlines.
Until some other president comes in.
Right.
You never know.
But you know, the difference between paying 38% or 35% and 21% is unbelievable. And that, I think 10 years we'll look back and think this is one of the biggest things that's ever happened to us. It's transformational to our economy.
It has already been, with all the companies now saying they will give back to their employees. And there's proof in the pudding with these $1,000, $2,000 checks. That people then ostensibly will put back into the economy?
I think it's just starting. Most companies don't know how big it's going to be. And when it starts coming in, that's when I think they will. You'll see even more of this stuff.
Craig Hodges of Hodges Capital, the name in small and mid-cap. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much.
So as CEO, Craig Hodges continues to run the family business with the same strategy as his father, Don Hodges, did when they founded the firm in 1989. And here's what it is. They buy stocks in well-managed companies that have been abandoned maybe by investors and analysts. Craig likes to say, we go where others fear to tread. And as the business development director, Clark Hodges applies the same daily principles that his dad taught him from an early age. Things like people are the #1 asset, whether it's your employees or your clients. And it's with this belief that Clark has helped build the firm's long-term business relationships. So today, I welcome Craig and Clark to our show to talk about their journeys to success and the good times and the challenging times of running a family-owned business with a rich heritage from their father, Don Hodges, and in such a large firm. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Valerie. It's a real pleasure to be on.
It's so good to have you and be able to talk about something that I think all of us can relate to, whether we have inherited a business or we're just starting a business. Business is business. And I would just like to first start with, Craig, what was it like growing up in the Hodges household? What did you learn from your dad?
Well, first of all, it was a lot of fun because he was a jokester, and he always had us laughing. And my mom was kind of the disciplinarian, and he was kind of the, I guess, good cop, if you will. But growing up in the investment business, we heard about investments, and at a very young age, he would buy us 2 and 3 shares of stocks that we could relate to. I remember him buying us a couple shares of McDonald's or Dr. Pepper when it was in the early 70s when it became more prevalent. And that really, at an early age, kind of started us thinking about, these are businesses and we can actually own part of these businesses. And so I think growing up in that type of an environment, it pretty much led us to kind of where we are now, and it's kind of been our lifelong passion, if you will.
Isn't that interesting? So did you get those stocks when they first started?
Yeah. In fact, I think in late mid-60s, he bought us just like 2 shares of McDonald's. And I remember that in 1971, we took a Holy Land trip with Dr. Criswell, the First Baptist Church here in Dallas, and the proceeds from those shares he paid for our vacation on that. So and it was just tiny amounts of money. So yeah, those were the early days of McDonald's.
If we could have all had that luck, right?
We could all go back, right?
I got a call from someone, or a relative, early on, and the call said, "Valerie, there's this little coffee business that's kiosks in Seattle, Washington," and the man lived in Seattle. He said, "It's really an interesting concept," and I thought, coffee in kiosks on the street? I don't think so. Oh my gosh. Darn.
Like a mulligan.
Really?
Yeah, do over.
I would ask you, Clark, as the younger brother, what's it like running the firm with your older brother?
It's really good now. There were some years in there when we butted heads, but that's what brothers do.
Right.
And we were very competitive growing up. But along the way, Craig really showed leadership in running the firm, and I really never had an interest in trying to manage every aspect of the business. I just wanted to get out and tell the story. And so years ago, it became evident that he had a talent and I had a talent, and we could both use those and try to grow the firm, and that's how it happened.
So tell us more about the differences in you two when you were growing up and now that you're running the firm. You're very different personalities.
Well, from my standpoint, I got the good job.
What's that?
I get to go out and tell the story. I travel. I meet financial advisors. I talk about how we manage money in our mutual funds. And I get to meet people and establishing relationships with people all over the country. It's really a great, fun job. And to be able to sit there and talk about it with the thought that this is our family business. And when I'm talking about Hodges Capital, they know I'm a Hodges. And it really is a great job to have. It's fun. And I like to be out and about, where I think Craig, he is more tied to the desk to look at companies and balance sheets and talk to management teams. And he goes out and interacts with management teams and decides whether they're good management teams or not. And it's just really a different kind of job, but I really do think I got the good job.
Well, Dad, I think, realized our talents early on and kind of set us up in those areas. Yeah. And I think he was also insightful enough to know that we probably shouldn't be doing the same thing, because you can step on each other's toes and that sort of thing. So it's worked out great. And back at him, I couldn't do his job. I would not be that effective at it. And Clark's great at meeting people. He's great at remembering names, and he's very personable. And that's been a real benefit for our firm.
Great at remembering names. Are you great at remembering names?
Is. I guess.
Are you?
Oh, I tell you, his craziest talent. He recognizes celebrities that no one else can recognize. Everywhere he goes, he recognizes celebrities. Am I lying? I mean, it is uncanny how. And these aren't these aren't type
these aren't A-listers.
These are kind of B-listers that you've seen before. You can't place, but Clark can place them, and it's really remarkable. And he'll go up to them and carry on. And a lot of these people really get appreciated appreciate that someone recognizes them, kind of thing. So. Well,
you just told a story before we started about recognizing you. Yeah. I'd love to hear that story again for our listeners.
This isn't that flattering. I've been on CNBC for probably going on 10 years, and I probably do it on a, I don't know, monthly or bi-monthly, or a couple times a quarter or whatever. But recently I was on the beach in Florida, and someone came up to me and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy on TV, CNBC?" And it was like my first, being recognized. And I don't know if that's that impressive. I don't know how. If I'm on the beach, he recognized me, and when I'm in a suit, they don't. So I'm not really sure what that says. But
well, I could do one better. I was at a national conference probably 3 years ago, standing at the Hodges booth, welcoming advisors as they go by. And very well-known investor Mario Gabelli walked straight up to me, looked at me, and said, "I saw you on CNBC the other day, and you were talking about small caps." I said, "Well, you saw my brother on CNBC." So we looked enough alike to him that I was recognized by Mario Gabelli as Craig Hodges.
Better than I did.
Well, you do look alike, obviously. That's all right. So what is it about the two of you that you would appreciate about each other? So, Clark, here's the question. What words, maybe 2 or 3 words, would you use to describe your brother now as you work with him?
A leader.
Okay.
Dad had a process of finding good investments. And what Craig did, and who knows when he decided to do this, but Craig decided, I'm going to learn what he does, and I'm going to emulate that, and I'm going to bring that to our firm. And so Craig is really responsible for himself and the other portfolio managers in our firm, how they find companies and look for stocks and determine whether they're good buys or not. And Craig sat next to Dad for years and years and years and learned that ability, and then he demonstrated it probably starting in 1999 or so when he started co-managing one of the funds, that he could do it himself as a standalone. And so you look today and you see what the other people on the investment team are doing, and they're really doing the things that Craig has shown them to do because Craig got it from Dad.
That leads really to just a good, solid leadership tip, right? That find those people that you admire in your industry that are leaders and learn from them. That's really what you're saying, and how wonderful that happened.
And Craig's a leader by example. He's not a rah-rah kind of leader. And you notice when he does decide to talk and say something emphatic about, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that, you could hear a pin drop in the room. And it's because he's shown in his actions that he'll do the work.
That shows a high degree of respect.
You bet.
What would you say about your little brother?
First of all, he's got a great work ethic, and he's incredibly effective at hunting down people. I can remember at a very, even in like 20 years ago when he first started working with us, if an idea crossed his mind, he would just go do it. Whether it was most people say it's a pie in the sky idea, but I remember, for example, I think you went and called when Bill Parcells became the Cowboy coach. You went to go call on him, just say, hey, I'm here, I'm doing business. Would you just move to town? Most people wouldn't even approach that. And Clark got in and got to talk to him, or not him, but the group, and that's just an example of he doesn't take no for an answer, and he's very good at finding those prospects and going after them, and that's what you need. You need someone who can relay the process and relay the story in an effective way, and Clark's great at that.
Isn't that great to have nice things said about each other?
You bet.
I want to ask you about going up and being bold. That's kind of the word that came to my mind. I mean, this man had just come to town, you said, right, with the Cowboys? How does someone who isn't that bold muster up their boldness to be more assertive?
Well, I think, Dad did business with John Templeton, famed investor, John Templeton, through the 70s and the 80s. And I think what I got from that is those guys put their pants on the same way we all do. Yeah. I also liked the aspect of being able to talk about it after the fact. Hey, I called on so-and-so, got kicked out, got no answer, but at least I did it. And I did it in a way where I really wanted it to kind of put hair on my chest, so to speak. I wanted to make me grow. And out-of-the-box stuff is hard to do when you're out of your comfort zone.
Oh, yes.
But I always was a good cold caller, and then I started cold calling in person years ago. And I remember when you approach a door that's closed and you're going in and you're going to try to get business behind that door, you really just have to say to yourself, behind this door could be a new house, could be a Mercedes, because you just don't know what could happen. And I'm still amazed that today, what one phone call or one meeting can turn into down the road as far as leading to sales. It's really amazing.
That's really a good tip for so many of us. I find that in coaching clients who are trying to get more executive presence and build their business, that there is that hesitancy if it's someone that's a big name or has a big title, and so I like what you said about everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, and really they're no different than us. And if they push you away, you just go to another door.
And you got a good story to tell.
And you got a good story to tell.
And Clark said something else I think that's important. He talked about your comfort zone. And I think that's something Dad used to teach us. we all want to get to where we're comfortable in what we're doing on a daily basis.
Sure.
But you don't grow when you're comfortable. And we try to every day do something that stretches us, something that we may or may not be ready for, but it makes you grow. And I think, getting out of your comfort zone and stretching yourself is very, very important for growth. And I think, we don't do it every day, but I think if you go a week without stretching yourself, you've wasted a week.
I like that. Well, then, in the business, when you have those issues, or even outside of the business, where you feel like you haven't done what you wanted to do, you've maybe even made a mistake, would either of you be willing to talk about a time when things didn't work out so well and how you recovered?
Sure, I can. I'm good at mistakes.
Thank you for that.
I've in 30 years of doing this, I couldn't count all the mistakes I've made. But I really believe that the mistakes are how you grow. You learn from your mistakes. I don't ever learn that much from my successes. In fact, the successes almost set you up for a little bit of failure. They kind of pump you up, and maybe things can be somewhat unrealistic. But I think it's almost a spiritual thing that when God closes a door, He's wanting you to go in a different direction. And I think that's what a lot of times what failure is God has another plan. And so, boy, I could go on and on. Your show is not long enough for me to talk about my mistakes. But at the same time, that also, I believe, is an advantage for us because we've been through a lot. In 30 years of investing, you're going to have a lot of mistakes you've made. But one thing I think we learn from our mistakes, and we try never to make the same mistakes twice. And so I think I think for investors out there, that's comforting to know that these guys have been through the war and made the mistakes, and they've gotten their nose bloodied, but they're still standing and still doing well, if you will. So today,
Clark, what might be some of the biggest challenges in the business?
The investment business, when you manage mutual funds, is really regulated. And from our standpoint, we're small. We're not a household name. We're not a Merrill Lynch, but we have a really good story. So the challenge is to tell the story and leverage the telling of the story as much as I can. So if I can get a big platform to listen, or the big platform might recommend our fund, then they've done my job for me, because all the thousands of advisors that use that platform would say, hey, they recommend Hodges. I'm going to buy Hodges. And I may have never had the chance to meet the thousands of advisors that use that platform. But so it's really constantly trying to find sales channels that will leverage your story the best.
Okay. What would you say is your biggest challenge as the CEO running the firm?
I think it's relaying our message. We have a different message. We're not doing what everyone else is doing. There are thousands and thousands of investment advisors out there that are telling you to buy the big companies, the ones that, the very recognizable names out there. And it doesn't take a whole lot of expertise to recommend ExxonMobil or, Starbucks or, those kind of things. Those are very established companies. But we're trying to find the inefficiencies in the markets, the things that the average person doesn't see. We have a 6-person research group. We make about 3,000 company touches a year over about 950 companies. So we're getting information and looking in areas that a lot of people aren't. And so I think the ability to get people comfortable enough to say, hey, these aren't your household name companies always, but they are great companies with great management teams that have great balance sheets and great business opportunities. And if you buy them and hold on to them, you'll make good money.
So those times when you're, as both of you running the firm, when you're disagreeing on something, how do you handle that? One of you wants to go north, the other one wants to go south. What do you do?
When Craig and I disagree, and it's been a while actually, it's been a long time since we've disagreed on anything, but one thing I've learned is that I may have a different opinion, and I'll have the ability to tell him, hey, this is what I think. And Craig initially, when I'm telling him exactly that moment, he's probably in his head saying, no, 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 no. But I do know one thing. Craig will process what I said. He will sleep on it, so to speak. He will give it consideration, and then he'll make the decision. That, to me, is all anyone can ask for in running a business together. If you voice your differences of opinion and that the other person genuinely consider it and think about it and process it. A lot of what our investment style is processing things and observing things. And so that's the one thing I know about Craig, is that when there is something that I disagree on, he will at least process it and think about it.
Well, and that again goes right to any relationship where there's, let's say, someone in a company and they're trying to bring something to the boss. That doesn't always happen well. What would you say if someone in your firm came to you with an idea and they were just really adamant about it?
Yeah.
How would you work that through so that the respect stays and you know that you're each hearing each other?
First of all, it depends on who's bringing it, and if it's somebody who really knows what they're talking about, you really do need to consider. And I try to set up guys in each department that really know their area. Clark knows the marketing area, and if he comes to me with a marketing idea, I'm going to listen. He knows. He's forgotten more.
He's the expert.
Yeah, he's forgotten more than I know about marketing. If it's something that's more controversial, that I need to bring more input in, and I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough, then I'll bring in other people in the firm and get their advice, operations, or research, or some of the maybe we have a board of directors at that as well, and just get as much input, and then make the best decision that you can. But like going back to the mistakes again, hopefully you've learned something over the years of making mistakes and knowing when to stand up and say, no, this is the way, and also knowing when to say, you know what, that person knows what they're talking about. Let's go with what they're saying. And so it's it's kind of a basic management tool, I would say.
Well, we would hope that everyone lives by that management tool.
You bet. And you appreciate employees that come to you unannounced and say, hey, I have an idea.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, you want them to be invested.
They're vested, yeah. They want to help, and they're thinking about this, and that's a rarity, really.
Well, and especially with today, you hear so much about the engaged employee or the employees, the statistics that say how few people are really engaged in their job. Yeah,
that's very true, and you can tell when somebody is engaged, and I think everyone wants to be engaged.
Right.
I think you can get to a spot with employees that they're just punching a clock, and you don't want somebody in that type of a situation. You want them to be passionate. You want them to wake up with some sort of looking forward to coming in and contributing. And we try to make everyone seem like they're part of the team, because in actuality they are. I mean,
sure.
I'm at the top sometimes, and I may look smart, but let me tell you something. There are guys in my research that are a lot smarter than me, especially when it comes to financials and balance sheets and some of that sort of stuff. So it's great to surround yourself with really good people that love their job, that have a passion for what you're doing, and you kind of feel sorry for those that don't. And you hope to help them, and you hope to include them and make them feel part of the team, but the ones that don't probably aren't doing what they should be doing, and they probably should be working somewhere else.
And you have to handle those things too, don't you?
Absolutely.
How do you handle those things?
It's difficult. My dad used to have a little bit of a philosophy that he didn't like firing people. And I learned that sometimes the best thing, like we talked about closing a door, the best thing sometimes is for someone to find another career or something else. God closes a door, and they could be happier doing something else. And so, if it's obvious that this person is not made or cut out for this, I think you're doing them a favor by closing a door and saying, look, you can do something better than this. And
that's how to say it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That happened to me one time. I will always remember it, and I totally agree with you. I was given an opportunity to go to work for a very well-known speaking kind of a organization with a famous person. I won't say the name. And I really thought this was going to be the very best thing. I was having to sort of interview with someone that was in charge of that department. And this man actually hired me that day on a Friday On a Monday, he called and he said, I've been thinking about it. I just don't know that you're a good fit. And I was devastated. I was devastated because I just knew that was the door that was my opening.
Sure.
Looking back, had I gone through that door, I would never have had my own business.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
So thank you for that. Tell me when you feel, and I'll start again with you, Craig, when do you feel personally the most fulfilled or the happiest?
Oh, wow. Honestly, when I'm the most fulfilled is I'm with my family.
Sure.
Yeah, that's when I'm the most fulfilled. I've got twin daughters that are freshmen, just finished their freshman year in college, it's now sophomores, I guess, and then a 17-year-old son. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is about just being around them, but life is good and it's vibrant, and things are good when I'm in that situation. Of course, my wife too. She's even worse than I am. I think she thinks she's one of the girls, when she's around them and their friends. But I think that's when I'm the happiest. But I also wake up every day supercharged to go to work and to work with these, the 9 other people in my investment team. They inspire me. Their work ethic and the things they do are very conscientious ways of doing things, and it's a lot of fun. To me, it doesn't seem like work. It's a blast. It's really. I wake up every day charged up. Yeah. So it's right. Good point. It's a blessing. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, and for those who haven't found that purposeful place, it's out there. It's out there.
Sure.
Right. What would you say are your happiest times?
As it relates to work easy, I understand that when I go to a conference, or if we have a meeting where I'm hosting advisors in our office, at the end of that time, I'm on cloud 9. I have a natural high about myself, and I'm real excited. And I'll fly home on the airplane, and I just feel great because I've had 2 or 3 days of human interaction. And I've come to learn that I believe that God's natural antidepressant is human interaction. Because
Say that again.
God's antidepressant is human interaction. I don't think you can be around people on a regular basis and be depressed, And so conferences, when I fly home, that's when I'm at a natural high. I really enjoy that.
Interesting you say that, in that I've had people say, I get my energy by being alone.
Really?
Not everyone is right.
Sure.
Or at least I've got to have my alone time, which we all have.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Here's something that I would love to hear both of you talk about for just a moment. If you could have a dinner discussion with someone that you just really admire, who would it be? And what would you talk about? Who wants to start on that one?
Mine is so corny, and this just hit my head, but mine would be Roger Staubach.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
I grew up the biggest Roger Staubach. By the way, I had the greatest father in the world, and I looked up to him, and to this day, I've never respected anybody more than my dad. But I grew up in, I think, a special time when your sports heroes were larger than life, and today they're not. I mean, today you see all the flaws, and you see a lot of them that aren't the greatest role models. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in Dallas, Texas in the late 60s and early 70s when Tom Landry and Roger Staubach were 2 of the greatest examples of what a man is that you could ever imagine.
Role model.
Yeah, and I've met Roger on a couple. He doesn't know me from Adam, but to this day, I think one of the luckiest things I think was having that type of a role model to try to be like. Not that I'm like that at all, but that is a great example. And I just don't know that our kids today have that as much. Someone that they really can emulate and look to and say that guy does it right and has it figured out. And so I'm blessed in that regard. I had a great father and then a great role model. But I don't know what I'd ask him at dinner. That'd be the hard part. I'd probably clam up and have trouble even communicating with him. But
and he puts his pants on one leg at a time,
I'm sure
just
he
like
does.
you do.
Yep.
He might even start the conversation. Craig.
He had one of the greatest quotes that was, he was very famous in the early 70s along with Joe Namath.
Mm-hmm.
And one time he was asked, Joe Namath was this big playboy, and they asked Roger about what's the difference between you and Joe Namath, and he said, I like sex just as much as Joe Namath. I just happen to like it with one woman. And, I thought that is the absolute perfect answer.
It's a good answer.
And that's the kind of thing that I respected about him. And
That's a good answer, is right.
Yeah.
So tell us what you would talk about and with whom.
Golly, it's really a hard question for me because I don't put a lot of stock in people like that
What do you mean by that?
Well, well-known people are human beings, and they've made mistakes. And I think sometimes you put these people on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say that I am kind of a self-help junkie.
Are you?
And the only name that really comes to mind is Napoleon Hill.
All right.
The author of Think and Grow Rich.
Sure.
And Dad talked about that book for years and years and years.
Still a good book.
And to think that he lived in a time where he could, it wasn't like today where he could readily find people. Mm-hmm. And he had a goal. And he wanted to work with this one person. And he set in his mind it was going to happen. And he made it happen. I just think that's amazing. So the mind control and the mind power is interesting to me.
Right.
And I think that would be someone I would like to ask questions about, or two.
So talking a little bit about positivity, and yes, the mind. What we put in our mind, it's like a computer, right? We're putting things in our brain all the time, and what we put in there sticks. And if it's something we don't want in there, we've got to hit delete really quickly, right?
Yeah.
Last month I write a monthly newsletter called Valerie's Voice, and it's very quick and to the point. And last month's was on positivity. I got so many immediate. Now, people will respond, but I mean that day, emails saying, oh, that was so good, or oh, I so believe that, or oh, I so needed that today, which is, I think, true. We all need some encouragement. We all need some boost in the arm about, gosh, I just, things aren't going great right now, but
yeah,
put it in your mind that it'll be another day tomorrow. The sun will rise. It'll go down.
I've heard the quote, I can't remember who is it, but genius is believing your own thoughts.
Oh,
and I think
like
you said, the brain is the most powerful computer there could possibly ever be.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all been in a situation where the brain tells us, you ought to do this, and then it's immediately followed by a skeptic of, no, that's a waste of your time.
That's so true.
And you almost discount it immediately. But I always believed that you go with that first thought. It's telling you something for a reason, and you ought to listen to that very first instinct, and don't be the skeptic that comes, oh, that'll never work. Because I think that the brain is telling you something, and we ought to listen to it and believe our own thoughts, if you will.
I like that a lot. I'm a really visual person, and as you were talking, I was thinking almost of two little characters, one on each, right?
The devil and the angel, right?
Well, yeah, or whatever you want to call it, but knocking off the one that's the second thought, or the analytical, or that won't work. Why? And what about
Right.
So that's really good. One of the things I asked each of you to do was to leave us with some what I call teachable points of view, and what I mean by that is things you've learned from your experiences that if you could teach, if you could share with other people so that they get rich experience from someone that's been there, done it, doing it right, if you will, pay attention to. So who wants to start on that?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Stick your neck out was something Dad would say, and take a chance. Have a little gumption about yourself to take a risk. And risk is not a bad term. A lot of people today think it is.
It's hard sometimes.
But stick your neck out. And the other thing I would say is that you will, if you try to interact with people and develop real relationships, not fluffy, just doing it because I might get a sale, your life will be so enriched by that. And then other doors will open for you that you probably would be amazed at. So I think that's one thing that our father did very, very well. He was the kind of guy that had a lot of relationships. He put a lot of stock in people. He had a lot of faith in people. And he believed that no matter what, and I can give you example after example of him saying, people we knew growing up, well, so-and-so is a good person. They just have one issue in this particular area of their life. And he was able to see through that.
Positivity.
And we all need somebody to see us that way, because we all stumble and fall short, as the good book says. So, I would say go through life, take a chance, stick your neck out, and you'll be glad you did.
Those are great. Thank you for that. What would you say?
Well, the first lesson I always tell people, the thing that I've learned, and this is a financial thing that I've learned, is leverage and debt are killers.
Ooh.
And always be careful about how much money you borrow. If you're fully borrowing as much as you can, it's not a question of if you'll go broke. It's just a question of when you'll go broke. And I've learned lessons over the years of being too leveraged, borrowing too much money to buy stocks or whatever it be. It's not just stocks, it's everything. It's real estate. People buy too much house, or they buy too much car, or they put too much on credit cards. That is a real disastrous way to go about things. So always live within your means and never borrow too much money.
Can I ask you something
Yes.
on that? So many people that I know of they have all of these credit cards, like bunches of them. And I asked one of them, why are you using so many credit cards? And their answer was, we're building like miles to go places. And so this card says if you pick it up, you know this story,
Yeah.
right, Clark? You pick up this card up and you get an extra immediate whatever. So what do you think about things? And then I guess they cancel it. I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
But I mean stacks of credit cards.
Yeah.
What would you say?
If you're doing something like that, you better be paying them off every month.
Ah.
A lot of people are suckered in by the minimum payment.
Okay.
And if you're paying the minimum payment, your debt is getting bigger and bigger each month. And I see the commercial on TV. It's a really good commercial. These people walk out of a restaurant and they had a $100 dinner. And they say on the way out, well, that's going to be a $500 dinner by the time we pay off the credit card. And that's really what it is. It's a much more expensive endeavor to live on credit cards. So just don't, if there's no other alternative, I guess you don't have any other way of doing it, but your goal needs to be to get out of debt as soon as possible. I've seen it over and over. You cannot go broke if you don't owe anybody money.
Good point.
You cannot go broke. And so use your leverage and use your borrowing money to a minimum.
Okay.
That's the first thing I'd say.
Good. What else?
I think find something you want to be an expert in. I heard one time that you can become an expert in something by studying it for 10,000 hours, which I guess is 6 years or something like that. Well, think about that. You can become an expert in something in 6 years. That's not that
pretty good.
And pick what you want to become an expert. But I think if you're young and you're wanting to get into a career, figure out what you want and become an expert. Spend your time. They say, how does an art critic become an art critic? He looks at art. He looks at a lot of art. That's how you become that, right? And whatever your endeavor would be, become an expert. I think that'd be the second thing. And then the third thing is that, we talked about, get out of your comfort zone. Stretch yourself. That's something I don't always do, but it's something I'm trying to be more and more aware of, that's how you grow. Even at age, I'll be 55 here in about a month and a half, but I continue to want to grow and I continue to want to stretch myself. I believe we're in the second inning of our business and the best times are ahead of us. So
I love those teachable points of view. And every session I tell the audience, which I will today, that if they want a copy of their teachable points of view, that they can have it, because it comes from wisdom. And we need to listen to people who have been there, done it, and doing it right. So I think that's great. What a great opportunity to have with you two. I really appreciate the fact that you were just so candid about your business for one thing and yourselves for the other. And we've learned a lot about what it's like to run a family business. I'm sure there are listeners out there that are in that space, and entrepreneurs and just leadership, period. So I want to thank you so much. You brought, and I ask you to, your dad's book on quotes. I have that book. Thank you so much for giving it to me. And so let me hold it up. And it's called Horse Sense Street Smarts. So I love the quotes. They're just, don't we all like quotes? Just quote, quote, quote. Look how many we said today. Full of quotes.
Right.
So tell us how this came about. I mean, how did he have time to write a book on quotes?
Well, what I remember growing up is we would be in the house, and a lot of visual in my mind is dad reading on the couch or reading in bed. And he claimed that if he read something that he thought was true, he saved it. So this is probably 45 years of reading something, saying, well, that's true. It doesn't have to be funny, it doesn't have to be catchy. He just said it's true. So he'd save it. He would occasionally call us into the room, hey, I want to read y'all something. Of course, we were kids. We probably didn't want to hear it, right? But he literally saved all those clippings. And then when we were having a kind of a surprise celebration for Dad on being in the business for 50 years, we grabbed that file and digitized it and made kind of a paperback version of all these quotes. And he liked it so much, he said, I'm going to make it a real book. And so he got some help, had an artist do the rendering, and he's from West Texas, so the whole theme of Horse Sense Street Smarts makes a lot of sense. And there'll be names in here that you don't know who in the world they are, because they might be people from the Panhandle of Texas. They might be people that he worked with when he worked in New York, But you also will see a lot of the well-known, Ronald Reagan, Warren Buffett, those kinds of things, because it was in his industry.
Isn't that great?
It's great.
It's a great read. And you can read a little bit at a time. That's what's great. You can read 4 or 5 quotes at a time and really get something out of it.
See, that I think we all can have value in quote books. And now that you know the background of this man's quote books, it makes it even richer. So I'm going to suggest to the audience that if they want a copy of the book, that they email me, Valerie, at valerieandcompany.com, or send a message to me on LinkedIn, and I'll get that information to you, and then you can take it from there. Will that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And I'll also mention that you can get my book, Do It Right. That's where this came from, Doing It Right, and it's on Amazon.com. So until next time, I hope that you'll join us for more candid conversations with other leaders who will share their teachable points of view. Be sure that you link to us and like our pages and all of that. And in the meantime, just stay authentic as you continue to build your executive presence and personal brand.